Hello and welcome to another Delboy 8-bit gaming. And in this particular edition, we're moving back to the Commodore 64, which I have high nostalgic memories of. And we're going back to 1983. So, yes, we're still back in the very, very early days. But my nostalgia for the Commodore 64 is probably because of my age at the particular time and my journey through computers. My Commodore 64 was an upgrade from my Commodore VIC-20, and the Commodore VIC-20, although powerful at the time, was not really a gaming machine like an Atari 2600 or an Atari 800. But I had immense fun with the VIC-20, but the Commodore 64 era was the time of expansion for me. And I'm going to be presenting to you a game that I have incredible nostalgic memories of, and one that I had immense fun with. So, what game are we going to be talking about today? So, I'm going to put up my images now, and we're going to be talking about a true classic, as far as I'm concerned, called Forbidden Forest, which was released by Cosmi in 1983. Now, the best way to explain this game really is to read it pretty much verbatim from the back of the box with a few little extra bits in there. So, in this game, the player controls an archer armed with a bow and a limit of 4 quivers of arrows per level. I believe there's 100 arrows. The aim is to move through a forest setting while eliminating various monsters, including giant spiders, bees, mutated frogs, dragons, wizards, skeletons, snakes, and then the final enemy, a Demogorgon. Now, I think that's 10 enemies. The monsters were inspired by the films Night of the Demon, Jason the Argonauts, and Mysterious Island. The game has 4 levels of difficulty: Innocent, Trooper, Daredevil, and Crazy, and that determines the number and speed of the monsters. So, what else is sort of like unique about this particular game? Well, I'd never seen movement of scrolling quite in this game as I had in this one, because it had something called parallax scrolling, where the foreground and the background move at different speeds. I believe this is also the first game where it used animated blood. Yes, the blood was red and it was animated. So that's pretty unique in a game that doesn't have an age certificate back then. Plus, it also has a day and night cycle. So you'll start off in the forest and it'll look all lush and green. And as you go through the game, it gets darker and darker. And then the shades of colors turn to blues, purples, and blacks, which is really good. Now, I remember buying this game. Now, I was in the summer holidays of my second or third year at school, and we were encouraged to do sort of like a job experience. And my job experience that the school set me up for was in Wolverhampton, and it was for a company called Prontoprint. Yes, my hometown had a Prontoprint, but I needed to go on training, and the training area was at Prontoprint. So I had to get on a train at a very early age, go to the training centre, which was at Wolverhampton, and train for a couple of days, learning things about ink, clearing up ink, setting up printers, ink printers, etc., etc., plus cleaning away the draft boards and so forth. I can't quite remember where I bought it from, but I do remember I bought it on tape, and it could have been from either a computer store or it could have been from WH Smith. Any of my friends, and I do know of one that knows Wolverhampton quite well, will probably know where I'm talking about if they can remember that far back and know where Prontoprint was. What I remember about was on that day was being excited about getting the game, which was in my lunch hour of the third day. So it was the day that I would be traveling back and finishing my training. The other thing was the Tannoy voice that was on the train. The bloke kept saying, "The train now arriving at platform 2 is the train stopping at Birmingham New Street, Wolverhampton, etc., etc. It was, and they, of course, all done in their own accent. So I'm not going to say too much more about it, other than I think most people will consider that classic games are followed by um, who the programmer is, and in this particular instance, the programmer is Paul Norman. And that might not mean an awful lot to you, but to me, it means quite a bit because during my Commodore 64 years, um, Paul Norman's name would crop up quite a few times. At the same time as Forbidden Forest, there was a game out called Aztec Challenge, which I believe was his first game. But later on, he would do Super Huey, a helicopter type game. And to be quite honest, there are a number of other games, and the similarity of them is not that close, other than he coded everything, the graphics, the sound, and therefore you could turn around and say that they are missing something in regards to what would happen if you were working with a team of people. He wasn't a bad graphic artist, he wasn't a bad musician, he wasn't a bad coder. It's just that some would state that the graphics were simplistic or chunky or blocky, or the sound was not that complex, etc., etc. But I'm looking at this from a whole picture, and I have nothing but enjoyment when I load up a Paul Norman game. This particular game also was so um, well received that a number of years later he followed it up with a Beyond the Forbidden Forest, which was a much more complex and comprehensive game and was advertised as being 4D. Now, I use that with tongue in cheek because what that actually meant was that you could go in into the screen, out of the screen, and you could fire up and down and into the screen, giving the impression that you're going beyond 3D, which you can't do. But what memories I've got of this. So we'll just move forward a little bit here just to show you what we're coming up with. So I mentioned before about the graphics and so forth. This is the Commodore screens, as you can see by the little Commodore symbol I've included in the pictures. The title screen looks very blocky, muted colors. It's almost like the leaves were defined and then they were just plonked on top of each other, sort of like a mosaic painting. Um, the character was very blocky, um, as were the creatures. They scuttled in and out of the screen or from the sides. Um, I have to say, though, that to program a game like this with parallax scrolling and to have a character that can rotate at 11 different degrees, um, I think it's just an immaculate job. And just to show you the muted colours as it goes to the night cycle, it turns into some lovely blues and purples, and eventually, when it's at pitch black, it's very black and white. So we'll just show you the other machine that this was ported across to. Yes, ported across because this game was developed on the Commodore 64. The Atari got its own version. And to be quite honest, it's not a bad version. It doesn't look too different. I think the leaves are a bit more sparse. The character could even be described as being better than the Commodore 64 version. Sound wise, though, not a par on the Commodore 64 version. And I may anger a few Atari lovers out there, but I'm sorry, but I think the Commodore 64 pips it at the post. So then we get to the reviews, and yes, this is such an early game that there was a lot more magazines out there for you to choose from. Commodore 64, computer video games, Commodore User, Home Computing Weekly. So I've just chosen one here that basically turned around and said this is a 5 out of 5 star game. When I was doing some research, I looked at the sort of like status of all the other reviews, and you can see the scoring there. It averaged out generally at around about 81%. So that's a pretty high score for such an early period of game. And we always talk about, if we can, my favorite magazine, which is Zap 64. And unfortunately, Forbidden Forest came out at a time where the game was already out. However, they did re-review it when it was released on budget label for £1.99. You have to go 31 months in from the launch of Zap 64, which was, I believe, March 85. So you're talking many, many years later. But even then, and they mentioned that the graphics were blocky, it scored 82%. Um, the game was so classic in their eyes that on the very first issue of Zap, they sort of did a homage to the top 50 games in their opinion. And Forbidden Forest came out at number 21 out of 50 games. Based on that average score, I've therefore given this game 8 out of 10. And that basically comes to the end of my explanation of a classic game called Forbidden Forest. And we're going to now see me try and play this game. I haven't played it in many years. It's not that particularly difficult a game, although you do seriously have to um, get the controls correct, because you have to load the arrow, then aim, then fire, and continue to walk. So you can get timed out by the timing of everything. So I'm going to bring up my game recording screen now, where hopefully I've got it partially loaded. And we're going to go for Trooper, I think, and press the fire button. And then we'll just look at the title screen and listen to that music. Here we go. The big spiders are after me at first. Got one. Generally, what you need to do here is either run away. When you face towards them, they run away themselves. But sometimes you can get them where they're keep coming towards you, and your arrows can get them. Whoa. See, notice how long it takes to load the arrow and then to give you about the way. You really can get caught out by the timing of that. Whoa, like that. Very close again. Like I say, I've got to get my timing right on this. Oh, so you can imagine it's a much more harder game when you actually take it away from the basic game. But I didn't want this to be a walkthrough. I didn't want this to be something where you can see every level. But I will try and do my very best to go through these hard levels. So I think it's bees next. Yeah. Got one. Oh. over the place with arrows. Oh, that was close. Oh, got it. So I had to kill 2 bees. I believe if you're on the earlier level, it's one bee. Now this victory dance, I love the music to this, but it is sort of divisive because you hear it so many times you get sick of it. But I'm humming this tune for days after playing this game and hearing that victory tune so many times. Okay, so now we've got horrible toads. Which can land on your head because of the amount of time it takes for you to load your arrow. Oh. Don't know how many you have to kill for this particular level. Oh, and I think it resets if you don't actually do it all. Oh no, there we go. That's good. So we don't have to do all. I think there was 10 there. My God. So far, what a game. You might think differently, but I'm having immense fun remembering this game and playing it again. Now, I can't quite remember, but I think it's the dragon next. Yeah. Now, if I can do it fast enough, you can turn around, shoot it, but you know. You have to let it go off the screen, turn around and fire, and usually you can do something. Where are you? Oh, look at that. Bloody hell. Got it. Whoa. I was lucky there. Starting to move into the night cycle as well. Good, it's still only one dragon. The dragon can be really quite fiddly, but if you know the Commodore 64 well, you can use some of the limitations, like how many sprites are on the screen, how it draws it on the screen, so you can sort of wander off the screen and come back on and use little tricks like that. But that doesn't get over the enjoyment of this game. Now, I'm not sure what the next one is. Right, so this is the ghost and the skeletons. Most people think you have to shoot the skeletons, but no, you have to shoot the ghost in the head, through in that little cape. It looks like a Scooby-Doo ghost. So we keep playing this game. We're going to go through it. Hopefully, won't take too long. Oh, go away, skeleton. I think I've just about loaded my arrow as well there, so that's good. Skeleton got me. Got him! Wow, that was very lucky because I just loaded my arrow and forgot to press fire just towards before I was about to move, and I managed to kill it. Like I say, I don't want this to be a walkthrough, but I'm really enjoying this and playing through it really quite well. I'm enjoying it immensely. The memory game as well, because after that I think it's a snake. Not sure. Now we're getting really dark. Let's load up the arrow. Yeah, snake. You have to shoot that in the head. But the lucky about this, the snake does wander from left to right. But because of the frames of animation, you can generally aim straight up and you've got a 1 in 3 chance of hitting it. So, not too bad at all. Oh, and I think it's the end now, the end creature. Now, the end creature you can only see with enlightening or when it wants to show itself. Otherwise, it's hidden. Oh, there you are. I can see it just over there. Missed it. The lightning makes me fire. It's over there. Oh, missed it. It was behind that tree. Alright, it's going to appear over here next. No. Oh, come on. Missed it. Oh, so close then. Sort of see it. There is it. Ah. Oh, he's over there. Oh, and he got me. And I died. So, let's go back to camera view and wrap up, shall we? So that's my little play on Forbidden Forest, and I didn't want it to be a walkthrough, and you didn't see the end, so I'm quite happy about that. And I didn't play it on easy either. That's a very, very early game, and you might think of it as being so coarse. How could you enjoy this? But there's so many firsts in this that I mentioned before: parallax scrolling, animated blood. There's 11 character movement of your hero, and those arrows can move up and down, so you can actually hold the button in, and the arrows can go further into the screen or out. It's an absolute brilliant game for 1983. And if you do get the chance to play this, I totally recommend it. Is it a classic? In my eyes, definitely this one is a classic. It gets a thumbs up and had so much enjoyment. I just want to go and play it again. So with that, I'm going to end this video and say salute, and I hope you'll join me in the next 8-Bit Gaming. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.